The white paper by the Government of India has been tabled yesterday. The contents at this point of time are available, and we are going to take point by point an understanding and a deep dive of what all are the charges of the government against the UPA era from 2004 to 2014. In fact, there are these three core points that the Government of India in its white paper has based its entire 54-page report. And of these three core points that have been mentioned by the NDA government, number one is about quote-unquote inheritance of loss. The number 2 point is about corruption and the scams that prevailed under the UPA era and the billions that had been drowned because there were these massive corruption charges, including the Commonwealth Games scam, including the 2G scam, Colgate, Augusta Westland, and so many others that have been listed. Third is where the Government of India comes out and says how there was an amelioration, how the BJP government brought the economy back into its current form and only getting revived here on from the incompetency that the UPA era brought, the stagnancy that the UPA era brought to the economy. Let's take it down point by point. Joining me right now is Sharat Kohli. Sharat, quickly getting a response from you. I'm first going to, first 15 minutes is what I'm going to focus on the overall picture of this 54-page report, and particularly with regards to the first point, the three divisions that I've just mentioned, and what do you make of the report?
Well, I think we need to understand the report with a 10-year frame. I mean, there were a lot of people yesterday who were talking about that. Why give a report which is dating back 10 years? Why give it after 10 years? This could have been given in 2014, 2015. But then for two reasons. One, to give this performance time to unleash. That was one reason. So we knew that the NDA government had started undertaking the reforms and started taking the corrective measures on whatever had gone wrong at that time. So it needed time to repair. One. Two, when you compare a 10-year period of 2004 to 2014, you need another 10-year period, a comparable period, to be able to properly say that the position, this was then and this is now. So that's my first reaction for the critics who were saying that why dig into graves after 10 years. That's my first point. Now, on the macroeconomic parameter consolidation, from fragile 5 to top 5, I think that for me is in this section the biggest takeaway. Okay. At that time, India was out of foreign exchange reserves. India's exports were not that great. India's balance of payment was not that great. India's overall imports were rising. We were increasingly dependent on other countries. Our supply chain was constantly disturbed and disrupted by various factors. That was one. Second, I would say is the pickup in exports. That is because of the government's foreign policy, government's diplomatic maneuvers, which it has done, and consolidation in the times. Megha. The biggest factor, I think, which needs to be considered in this report is that at least 2.5 to 3 years of this phase was lost in COVID. I mean, imagine if COVID was not there, that 2019 end to about 21 end, I would say 2 years. Imagine if there was no disruption of COVID. These results, this outcome would have been far better because we had a huge setback. The whole world has a setback and we had a setback as well. The economy went into lockdown. There were no exports. Factories closed down. Everything, the entire economic activity majorly came to a standstill. So I think despite those 2 years, so for me, it's a comparison of 10 years versus 8 years and not a comparison of 10 years to 10 years. So that was one. I think the second aspect, Megha, is corruption. I feel that if you ask me why this government has been able to achieve what it has achieved, one of the top of the list would be because the government at the top level, I can vouch, has been corruption free. The sole intent of the top level of the government has been welfare of the state, development of the country, growth, development, performance, the new GDP acronym which has come up, growth, development, performance. That's been the focus, Megha, of the government. Whereas the previous government, there's a long list of scams, right from coal to 2G to to Augusta Westland and so and so. So there's a long list of scams. So when the intent of the top level of the government is not development but vesting, it obviously affects the growth of the country. So that for me is the second takeaway, Megha. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, you are.
All right. Ajay Dua, quickly a response from you as well. What is the key takeaway, and particularly in terms of the opposition's counter-attack and the Congress particularly, when they talk about how there have been certain sectors that have been omitted. Top of the stack that the Congress has put up against BJP is unemployment, farmers' welfare and the price rise.
Megha, after Mr. Kohli has given a detailed explanation of what things were earlier and what things are now, I don't need to repeat those, but I would say that at any point of time, there are issues which stand out, which need greater attention, and that's not, when one points out those, it should not be in the spirit of first taking away the credit for where you are right now. And that's what the white paper invariably seeks to point out, saying what's the current status of things, scheme of things, and how do we intend going forward based on that. So as of now, as the white paper says, the government has had a good performance, economic performance over the years. We have reached the state of the first 5 in the world in terms of our GDP growth. We are hoping to make it to the third rank very shortly after going past Germany and the UK. And the way things are happening around the world, it does seem likely that we will do it fairly soon.
Okay. Ajay, also, a big contention by the opposition when the BJP says that during their era from 2014 up until 2024, there is a robust GDP percentage of 6.8 now and projected one at 7% by the RBI. And a reflection and the comparison that the opposition is making is that from the year 2004 to 2014, there has been an increase in the GDP of the country. There was a robust 8% growth that the country was facing, enjoying.
Yeah, Megha, you are absolutely on the dot in that. To record a higher rate of growth on a smaller base is always easier than to record a similar pace of growth when the base has expanded. I give you an example of China. China, which when we started our liberalization in 91, China had started it 10 years earlier in 81, and from 89 onwards, it's been firing on all its cylinders. The Chinese rate of growth has been for 30 odd years in double digits, but now China realizes that it cannot sustain it. That's halved now during the current year, and no one gives it a chance of improving very much beyond that. So similarly, with our GDP having expanded to have reached this level of the fifth rank in the world, likely to be third, as I mentioned, you cannot be maintaining the same rate of growth which you did earlier, average 7.5% to 8% in one particular year, even 9.9% towards the end of I think it was 2014-15 by when this government had come in, when we recorded our highest rate of growth, which was 9.9%. So that's one point I wanted to make.
Okay.
Second was that the rates of growth are invariably affected by what's happening around the world. If for the last 3 years, the world is not recovering as fast as India did, our trade wouldn't grow that much, because after all, trade depends upon the GDP rate of growth of the other countries across the border. The FDI flows would get affected if the pockets from where it is to come, those pockets themselves are becoming smaller or shrinking. And when I say this, it is WTO which monitors the flows of trade It's always been saying it for the last 3-4 years that the world trade is shrinking, and that's the current projection as well. And
Right. We're talking about how there is a contraction when it comes to the global growth rate versus, another argument that has been put up by the Congress, saying that 2008 global financial crisis was also a reason why there was this massive dip in India's development quotient.
Probably, it won't be entirely correct, but it won't be entirely wrong either, because the global, as I was just making the point, the global developments do affect India as well. Ever since we've opened up, and we've opened up to the foreign FDI largely in the 2000s, not towards the end of 1990s, but largely in the first 5 years or first 6 years, when every year, every few months, we'll be relaxing our FDI regulations. So to that extent, I would say 2008-9 did affect a better flow of capitals into the country, FPI flows, but that's again a global phenomena, because when an American economy, which has got almost 30% of the world's economy, is accounted for by just one country, what happens there? The epidemic is bound to spread elsewhere, and we did feel a part of it. Exactly what is happening now in our trade, as well as the FDI inflows. Because the world economy is not recovering so well, so it did shrink made our export-import trade not grow at the pace we would have wanted.
Okay.
Similar, have also affected the FDI flows as well as the FPI flows.
Okay. Sharad, there's no denying and no running away from the fact that this is in fact a political slugfest that is happening, the white paper versus the black paper, because if the government is doing a fair, unbiased comparison of the last 10 years and the 10 years previous to that, there are going to be good points, good execution, good policies that would be visible under the Manmohan Singh regime, Manmohan Singh 1, Manmohan Singh 2 regimes. Similar is the case with the hits and misses that the BJP would also have witnessed in the last 10 years under Prime Minister Modi.
Yes, Megha, nobody scores a perfect 10. So there were, as you rightly said, there were a lot of good things done during Manmohan Singh rule as well. And there must have been some misses in the NDA rule as well. I think what the opposition forgets is that it tends to criticize everything that is being done by this government, and that's where they go wrong. There could be wrong, but not everything could go wrong. That's for sure. If we were $1.9 trillion from 1947, Megha, to 2014, we are $3.75 trillion from 2014 to 2024, which means what we achieved in 65 years, we achieved in 10 years, we almost doubled. So something right must have happened. If our exports climbed to $775 billion, something right must have happened. If 25 crore people came out of multi-dimensional poverty index, something right must have happened. So I think where the opposition goes wrong is, and they lose their credibility. I have a very neutral comment here to make, Megha, that when you criticize everything, that's wrong. Everything, every single step being done by Modi government is being called as wrong and completely baseless. Now, I think you lose your credibility of criticism. So if criticism has to come with logic, you want to put up a question, you want to raise a question. But when you give a zero to everything, you lose, then people stop listening to them. So first of all, there's nothing called a black paper. I'm sorry for being biased here, because I've heard of white paper. There's nothing called a black paper. So, if they take out white, I have to go opposite. I have to take out a black paper. And when you do not believe the numbers, now the 3 points, Megha, which you raised just now. First was unemployment. Now, unemployment, as per my analysis, although I must put on record here that in this country at the moment, there is no comprehensive way of measuring unemployment. EPFO gives some data. CMI gives some data which is scattered here and there, which is not based on proper samples. There is no official way of measuring unemployment. So anybody who claims that unemployment has fallen down or unemployment has grown, I think that comes under scanner. But what I can tell you as an economist with a lot of conviction is that for skilled manpower, I'm going to say this for the first time, on any channel for that matter, Mega, that skilled unemployment at this point is in negative. Now, what does negative mean? To help NewsX viewers, that every skilled person in this country has got more than one naukri. I'm putting it down in very straight terms. He's got a choice. He can work here or he can work there. There are more than one. So this is the state of unemployment. To my mind, unemployment rate is between 3 to 4%, Mega. It is not 7 to 8%. Someone must prove this number before uttering out a number which is coming out of thin air. You spoke of farmers. Now, farmer PM Kisan Nidhi with 6,000 rupees going into the bank account by DBT, thanks to the jam trinity which has happened, going to the bank account of farmers. We had not heard that before. This was not happening. 2,000 rupees going every 4 months. E-marketing, connecting of mandis, building of infrastructure for farmers. Everything possible that can be done has been done. MSPs, we are catching up. We are trying to double their income as far as possible because there is an inflation aspect to it.
Okay.
Now, the third point, Megha, which you raised, inflation. When the world inflation was out of control, an emerging economy like India with 142 crore people was able to tame that inflation. Now, with what America could not do, what Europe could not do, that an emerging economy like India could do. So how can you question your inflation during the UPA era was in double digit? So I think it is baseless to compare inflation with then and inflation now. We are around 5.5% now, which is well within the limit. Look at the supply chain disruptions. UPA did not have a Russia-Ukraine war. UPA did not have a Gaza-Israel conflict like the way it is happening. In that era, the geopolitical tensions were never like they are now. So in this situation, on relative terms, Megha, we always do a comparison which is relative. As Mr. Dua said, that if the world growth is 6% or 5%, we are growing at 8%, no big deal. But if the world grows at 2.5 to 3%, we are growing at 7% plus, it's a big deal because we are going twice the rate what world grows. So I think there is a need for relative comparison. If you make absolute comparison, you might come up with weird conclusions, Megha.
Okay, all right.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.